Ms. Sigel Znube.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Behari, you were still dealing with the JM32, which is the letter of 21 June 2023.
That's correct. Correct?
You were mentioning something about 19 June.
Chair, in my discussions with Chief Mapie, he is dealt with the issue of what we engage and how I could look at the way forward on that. The appointment, he said the appointed presenting officer, Advocate Sabisi, compiled 6 charges after perusing the investigation docket. The charge sheet was submitted to DH NISA and scheduled to be served on the 19th, but was not yet served. So, in engaging with him, when he asked me on the way, can I suggest a way forward, I was not aware that I needed to give, firstly, why the charge sheet was not served when it was there already on the 19th. And then he writes to me a letter on the 22nd, or 21st, but received on the 22nd, to state on the 22nd the charges must be served. Now, to the extent that service of charges is not dealt with by legal, but I would have suggested a way forward to assist in the matter. But on the 22nd, I'm called upon now to suggest a way forward on charges being served. There's no explanation why they were not served on the 19th, from what I've looked at the letter. And there was no engagements, of course, I had further with the Chief of Police, but that was one of the concerns I had. 22nd of June was clearly with no explanation why those charges were not served by the 19th. So I do say that, yes, I did commit to assisting him, but 22nd it was impossible to, with me not being in the city as well, to have done anything on that yet.
Okay. Why did the meeting of 21 June 2023 with the chief happen in the first place?
It happened, as I said, arising out of the engagements with Henry Erasmus and what was required. Thereafter, the charges were, well, I wasn't aware of the processes then until Chief came to me. There was a meeting arranged, and I've got that on the calendar. And then Chief, when he came to me about the issue, then I explained to him what were the concerns that I had. But then he said the charges needed to be drafted. The charges were drafted. And then I said, okay, fine, let's see how we can follow up to have them served. But then the charges were on the 19th. So clearly, whatever happened in my engagements with Erasmus was not taken into account. They proceeded on the same basis with the charges. And then if the charges were to be served, that would kick off the disciplinary process.
But he wouldn't have voluntarily engaged you. He was liaising with Ngiza, Mr. Ngiza, and HOD and Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus. He wouldn't have voluntarily engaged you. So there must have been something that happened that he was either told to speak to you about this or you contacted him.
Chair, I didn't contact him. I spoke to Erasmus about some time back. It's about almost a month after that, about what still needed to be done in the matter. So when Erasmus moved forward, it seemed that whatever I said to him, he decided to go ahead with the charges. Right. And then Chief of Police came to me thereafter. I didn't make an arrangement for a meeting for him to come through. I just got a calendar invite on my thing to say Chief of Police meeting. Why he came through for me? Because the service of charges is not my area. We discussed the issues which are raised as a concern again and with him in terms of what were the implications, some of the implications of not having the witnesses. Thereafter, I see the document to say that I must assist with the charges, with the serving of the charges. But that is an HR function, Chair.
If it's an HR function, why didn't you just say that to him? Why didn't you just say, this is not a legal function. It's the 22nd of June, 2023. I don't need to be involved.
Chair, he came to me after my engagement. So the full discussion, which what I had with Erasmus as well. He came to me to see if I could, let's say, assist in processing that. By that time, he never informed me that it was due on the 22nd. says it was supposed to have served on the 19th. It was not served. That's a letter he showed me afterwards. But on that date, he wanted to know how can I assist in the process forward. But the letter that he sent to me shows it was supposed to be served on the 19th. And then he says, okay, it was not served without explaining to me what the situation was.
Okay, so when did you tell him that it's not a legal function, it's an HR function, and it can go ahead without your involvement?
No, I didn't tell him that because he was dealing with NISA. You see, all the stuff is about NISA and so on. He was dealing with NISA, but he came to me after I met with Erasmus, and I explained to him what the situation. I discussed the same things that I discussed with, I think, on the concerns of that. But it seems that they had continued to proceed to process the charges and proceed. So I didn't have any engagements then on that. My issue was then, okay, let's see how we can finalize. You come here, let me see how it goes. Because the service of the charges is not with me, it's with EMPD. It's with EMPD and with the HR.
So the dossier gets delivered to you on the 22nd of June, like Commissioner Baloy had indicated to your office. It's sitting there, you do nothing about it.
See, I wasn't around on the 22nd. I got back on the Tuesday, the following week.
And then,
sorry?
did you follow up?
No, by that time, the date, when I looked at the date, it had already gone past for service of the document. I didn't do anything further. I didn't follow up.
Okay. So that was one of the instances that I think what Commissioner Kumalo was saying, well, you were involved. There was another trigger event, which was the IPID report. And before we go to the report, can I just understand how you got sight of the report? How did you get into possession of that report?
So the IPID report comes through to the ordinary, all reports from regulatory bodies come through to the Office of the City Manager. I would get involved in the matter from a compliance to look at what are the issues, whether it's a public protector, IPID, any report. That's what my role was. When I received the report, it was addressed to the Chief of Police, so we didn't get involved in that disciplinary processes there. But I engaged with my DH to say, DH, can you look at the fraud and corruption issues? And then how would we interpret the issue of, however, what must we do? Because the engagement with Mr. Kanye, where I got called by the city manager when she arranged a meeting with him, was to say that we're still finalizing the investigations, because the question was, why have they not arrested him? They could not give a response. He said, we'll inform you when you're arresting him. And that is where I got involved in it.
Now, can we just take a step back? If we go to your statement, page 37, at paragraph, you deal with it from paragraph 179.
This
Page 37. At paragraph 180, you say, on or about September 2023, IPID delivered a report to the city containing preliminary findings on various EMPD matters. The report contained disciplinary recommendations and referred to potential criminal conduct. Several of the findings were framed in broad terms, pending prosecutorial direction from the National Prosecuting Authority. Now, you say various EMPD matters. What are you referring to as various EMPD matters? Are you referring to more than one employee involved in here, or one employee but various matters relating to just that employee?
The matters related to Mkhwanazi, and there's various other, fraud, corruption, and so on. So that's what we're referring to.
Okay, so it was just related to Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Okay. Is that the report that's at JM19? So JM would be Chief Mapie's annexures, page 103.
One, 103.
Yes, 103 JM19.
It is just the last page.
Are you in?
From 101 to 103.
No, it's 103 And it's JM 19, it's the Independent Police Investigative Directorate document. Are you in the annexes of Chief
The
Mapie?
annexes of Chief Mapie, I've got a page 101.
Are you taking us to the last page?
Yeah.
I think mine says 103. Let me just look at the.
Because JM 19 starts at 101 and 103 is the signature page.
Chair, then I think we're
It's
working off
it's
the,
an-
not the same
It's an
bundle.
IPID letter.
I do have the iPad letter. Mine just starts on 103, not 101, which is MPS memorandum. Is that the one? I just
Yes, that's the heading we
Okay.
have, and paragraph 1 is headed Summary of Allegations.
Yes.
The complainant alleged that in February.
I think the electronic bundle may be just incorrectly numbered then.
Yes.
So it's 101. You have it as 101, 102, and 103.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the document that you're referring to in paragraph 180 of your statement.
That's correct.
And we know that this was directed to the chief of police. Now, you don't say how it came into your possession. You just say in 181, the city manager requested that legal services department to prepare a draft response. How did you come into possession of
A
the
copy was
document?
provided to me from the office of the city manager.
The city manager gave it to you. Okay. And was this via email or were you with her somewhere?
No. From the office upstairs. My office was down, so she would have delivered a copy to the.
Okay. Then you also mention somebody by the name of Mr. Osborne Kanye. What is the relevance of his involvement?
So after the documents were received, remember it was served on the executive mayor and chief of police in a meeting. After the document was received, I was called, I'm not sure exactly, but I was called to the office by Ms. Naika to say that city manager has arranged with Mr. Osborne Kanye. Osborne Kanye is from IPID. I think he's a high, from what I've understood, he was a high commissioned officer. And that is when we had the engagements of, because in terms of the classification of the matter on corruption, and we asked Osborne, but why have you not arrested him because of the serious fraud and corruption allegations? And then we were informed that no, he will give us information in terms of us going forward further with regard to the case. But I wasn't aware in terms of what the discussions they had with the HR processes and with Chief Mapie and so on. The only, from our side, was looking purely at the fraud and corruption in terms of further processes that we need to initiate from the legal department, which would included, other remedies that we needed to include.
Okay, so were you in a meeting with Mr. Kanye?
I was called to that meeting. The city manager and Osborne Kanye were already there, and I was called to that meeting.
Okay, so you were present in that meeting. And in that meeting, he's presenting this report.
Yeah, we already had received the report, remember, through the office of the executive mayor. So city manager called him in for a meeting. When I called in the meeting, the document was already there. And then I asked him, but in terms of fraud and corruption, there is a case number as well. Why have you not arrested Mkhwanazi already for the fraud and corruption? Then he mentioned to me, no, but the DPP is still dealing with the matter. We will give you a progress as soon as that happens.
Okay. And was the MMC community safety in that meeting?
The MMC community safety was in a previous meeting with the executive mayor when the report was first delivered. Chief of police was in there with the executive mayor and certain office bearers from IPID.
So there were two meetings with Mr. Kanye.
Yeah.
One you were not part of?
The first meeting, Mr. Kanye was part of a meeting that was held at the office of the executive mayor. On the 9th of November, 9th of November, September, sorry. The meeting seems to have been on the 9th of November. The report, IPID report is dated 1st of September 2023.
Yes.
But the meeting and handover with Klaseng, who was the IPID head, was at the mayor's parlor on the 9th of November 2023. The other meeting was the MMC, Masuku. It was the Executive Mayor Mkhwanazi. It was Mr. Osborne Kanye and Robbie, I can't make it clear, Tuso Yafele, the author, and Songi Palmer was from the mayor's office, and Yolelwa. So that's the copy of the register that I have.
But at this stage, the chief of police had already received the letter. It was addressed to him earlier on, or was that also where he received the letter at that meeting?
I don't see the chief's name here, but no. So there was, I know I received a copy to deal with my issues. I'm not sure what happened with the chief of police, with the entire document was given, because there the chief of police, the report was addressed to him. And I received a copy for my issues in terms of the compliance issues that we need to look at.
And you would have received that when in November?
It would have been after the 9th of November. It was the mayor's parlor. I'm not sure when the mayor delivered to the city manager, but it could have been in the week or so of that 9th of November.
Okay. Now, in that meeting, you meet with Mr. Kanye and he's telling you that they are still busy with investigations.
That's what he mentioned to me, that they referred to fraud and corruption in terms of the recommendation. Then I said to him, but why didn't you arrest him? You know, these are serious charges. And then he said to me, no, it's still with the DPP for decision. And I said to me, so on my aspect, he was waiting for the DPP to conclude and then give us the report for us to follow up on the fraud and corruption aspects in terms of our processes through MPAC and council and other processes we need to put in place.
Okay, on page 102, at paragraph 2 of that document, there is an instruction that is given by IPID to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Director Julius Dr. Mkhwanazi. You see that? It says you are directed to initiate disciplinary proceedings.
On page 102.
102. As I understand it, your document it has page 2. It's page 2 of the document?
So 103, I've got an IPID recommendation. Is that the paragraph you're referring to?
No. I'm looking at the one that says, it's your page 102. It's internal page 2, and the heading is 2 case docket contents right at the top.
Okay.
Do you see case docket contents?
Yes.
In terms of Section 30 of the IPID Act number 1 of 2011, read with the SALGA Disciplinary Procedure Collective Agreement issued on 1 February 2018, you are hereby directed to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Director Julius Dr. Mkhwanazi. Do you
Yes,
see
I
that?
Yeah.
And it says the investigation into this matter is complete.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you're having this meeting with Mr. Kanye from IPID about Commissioner Mkhwanazi, what are you asking him about these disciplinary proceedings, because you are directed to initiate it?
I've never asked him about the disciplinary proceedings, ma'am. This letter was directed to the chief of police. So I was never involved in the disciplinary. My aspect was look at the compliance matters as regards fraud and corruption. There are other processes that we initiate if we find the fraud and corruption. So mine was never to deal with the disciplinary process at all.
But that can't be, because we know that from 22 August 2023, you're performing this legal review assessment function where you are to be the extra step in the compliance insofar as disciplinary proceedings are concerned. Now you're sitting here with a document that's directing the EMPD, it's directing the city to institute disciplinary proceedings. What do you do about it?
Chair, the 2022 letter from the city manager,
2023.
the 22 August letter from the city manager was to talk about our internal processes, our internal investigations. This matter here, like any other report, came directly. It was already investigated. They are issuing a directive. It was already, and the directive was to the chief of police, not to me. I looked at the other processes, especially when I'm concerned to say, but if you're looking at, however, the document is referred to the DPP for decision, what would the implication be for us in terms of me informing other processes? The year that did not deal with the 22 August scenario, 2023 at all, because there was a directive coming from the IPID on that issue. The only issue was, for mine, which I raised with Mr. Kanye, was you're directing on the one side to proceed with it, but then you're saying the recommendation based on the above information contained in the case docket, IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken against Director Julius Mkhwanazi for the contravention of MP disciplinary process collective agreement, standard of conduct themselves with honesty and integrity. However, the document is referred to DPP for decision. So if it's a directive that is issued there, the going into further now has created some doubt in terms of, that's why I cleared it up with Kanye. I'm not involved in a disciplinary process. The 22 August 2023 was not for me to decide. This is already a completed investigation from external authorities, regulatory bodies.
No, Mr. Behari, on your own version, you are the extra step in terms of compliance. If you go to your statement at page 11, paragraph 41, you say, on 22 August 2023, the city manager issued a directive requiring that all disciplinary and grievance matters involving senior personnel be subjected to a compliance review by legal services prior to finalization of charges or outcomes. Now, here you are sitting with the IPID, the person from IPID. There's a directive that's directed to the chief of police to institute proceedings. You're sitting there with him. You, at this stage, know nothing about whether the proceedings, the disciplinary proceedings have been instituted by the chief of police, correct?
I have no idea of what happened there with the chief of police.
Okay.
That's correct.
So do you go back to the chief of police after this meeting and say, are we complying with this directive from IPID?
Chair, you're linking the IPID directive to the 22nd, where I was the added leg of compliance. Those are two different functions and for two different purposes. The one for the 22nd was to look at our internal investigations from the departments themselves, and then to refer that for me to assist in terms of the three tiers, in terms of further investigation and so on. This was a completed report. The only way we could have proceeded further against this, if we didn't agree with it, was to review it. But we didn't take that on review. I was looking at the criminal aspects, the issues of the fraud and corruption, and my obligations in terms of the chief would have run a parallel process with regard to going through the HR. That we are separate on that issue.
But Mr. Behari, you knew of the existence of disciplinary proceedings against Commissioner Mkhwanazi then already. You knew about this since May of 2023 when you had the discussion with Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus. All of a sudden, those proceedings, you say after June 2023, you have nothing to do with those proceedings. You meet with Mr. Kanye where there's a directive in this letter. You read the letter. You saw that there's a directive to institute proceedings. You say to him, we already started the process. I'll follow up with the chief to find out what happened to that process, because the last I heard was June 2023. I don't know what happened after that.
Chair, to the extent of what you're suggesting, Council, is I looked at this as a separate process. That process ended, or where it was thereafter of my involvement on the 22nd with the service of charges, or so. I never followed up on that issue. I've dealt with that because I would expect then to be a comeback to say, but we haven't finalized or whatever. I had nothing further from there. On this matter now, if it came about in September, but in November it was served in the city, I was looking at purely my functions. It has nothing to do with the appointment on the 22nd of August or and so on. It was purely my functions. And that would mean then accepting that the chief of police would have taken that to HR to complete the direct, as per the directive. But then again, from my side, the directive, in my discussions with Osborne Kanye, you're directing on the one hand to say proceed with disciplinary, but then you still go and say make it an IPID recommendation, which was to say that there's DPP. I would have been interested in that DPP issue to follow up to say, well, how do we respond from that side?
Mr. Ngubet, can I just take us back to 21 June 2023, and we will come back to this issue. I must get your surname right. You know, late in the afternoon, I might get it wrong again. Mr. Behari, page 28 of Chief Mapiaya's statement. Paragraphs 102 and 103. You would have seen it before because you referred to it in your statement.
28.
Paragraph 102.
PA, on page 28, I've got number 22, 26, 27.
We are in the Mapiaya statement. I
Oh,
don't know what
sorry.
you're
Oh,
looking at.
apologies. Okay. I see.
You have it?
I've got it here.
Page 28.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Remember, Ms. Ngube asked you about that meeting of the 21st of June, 2023, and how it came about. And you said you didn't know. You suggested that it may have been initiated by Chief Mapiaya. This is what he said in his statement. On 21 June 2023, and following discussions initiated by Mr. Sheka and Advocate Behari, HOD Legal Services, I was pressured to hand over the docket dealing with Brigadier Mkhwanazi to Advocate Behari. This I did as per my memorandum to Behari dated 21 June 2023. So it's that memorandum we looked at. And then he says, I was instructed to withdraw the charges against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. So that was the outcome. The outcome was that he was instructed to withdraw the charges against Mkhwanazi, and in fact, he did.
Was he instructed by me?
You
Chair,
might-
firstly, the meeting of the 21st of June only involved Chief Mapia and myself. So I deny that it was involving Gasheka as well. I know that it was myself and Chief dealing with the issues of what I discussed with Erasmus. I'm not aware that Gasheka was there for any reason, and that I was forced to withdraw subsequently. I didn't ask them to withdraw any charges.
I'll tell you why Gasheka was involved. Because a week earlier, on the 15th, she had given an instruction that Mkhwanazi must be returned to his position. And arising from that discussion, this meeting took place. And in this meeting, he was instructed to give you the dossier. So the agreement to give you the dossier was in the form of an instruction, which he then did. But the reason why you did not take the matter further is because you are aware that on the 22nd, he accepted or followed the instruction and duly withdrew the charges against Mkhwanazi. And that's on page 182 of our bundle, the Mapiaya JM section. It's JM 33.
182, you withdrew the charges, yeah? 182 of Mapia's banner.
Yes, 182 Mapiaya JM 33. That was the outcome of that entire exercise. He was instructed to withdraw the charges, and he did. So if you read that with 103 of his statement, I've already taken you there.
Chair, on 182, I've got here to 2nd of February, allegations are very serious against that, correct? To date, the matter has not been concluded. I, as a municipal police commissioner, have taken a charge to withdraw the internal investigation process under case number. Is that including the charges, Chair?
Yes. So this is the outcome of the meeting on the 21st.
Chair, but is withdrawing the internal investigation from what I'm reading here? Is the internal investigation now, and it doesn't make sense because the internal investigation was completed.
No, Ms. Berry, you know what the internal investigation is. This matter was at the stage where a charge sheet was prepared.
Yes.
You've been taken to page 180. Advocate CBC was instructed, together with attorneys, they prepared 6 charges. So when the discussion is taking place between you and Chief Mapieye, you are aware of those facts.
Chair.
Now, he's asking you on page 180 for urgent guidance.
Yes.
He said so. I'm seeking urgent guidance on way forward. It's on page 180, the very first paragraph.
Yes.
He says in his statement, the outcome of that meeting was that I was forced to hand over the dossier, and then I was instructed to withdraw the charges against Brigadier Mkhwanazi.
Chair.
So the reason why, this is what I'm putting to you, the reason why you didn't follow up is because you know that he was instructed to withdraw the charges, and he did. Because otherwise you would have asked him, what happened to the charges?
Chair, I was not aware of that instruction to withdraw. It says here instruction to withdraw the internal investigation process. I don't see that the issue of the charges. And I spoke to Advocate Sanele Sebisi, Chair, when we were looking at that after the BS.
Can we please not talk about Advocate Sebisi?
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Chair, is this document talks to withdrawal of the investigation process. I don't understand that how now he says that I instructed him or he was instructed to withdraw the charges. By whom? Because I did have a meeting with Chief on my own, between Chief and I, and the same engagements I had with Erasmus were also conveyed during that meeting. So when you say instructed to withdraw the charges, I'm not sure who instructed him because this letter talks to withdrawing of the internal investigation process.
Yes, but you know what that process is because the day earlier you were discussing the process, and the process was that a charge sheet had been prepared. It was just awaiting service.
Chair, to withdraw the internal investigation process, I understand that from reading it now would have been a concluded investigation. If it was about withdrawing the charges.
Advocate Barry, you and I are advocates.
Yeah.
Chief Mapieye is not an advocate. So when he says withdrawal of a process, you know exactly what he means. He doesn't have to say the charges. A disciplinary process includes the charges. You and I as lawyers should understand that when a layperson speaks, they won't use the exact language that you and I use when we engage with each other.
Chair, I respect what you're saying. The issue for me is, from what I'm looking at now, it's not clear because I didn't give any instructions on withdrawing the charges. I engaged with Chief of Police and I had no involvement in any withdrawing of charges. And this is not very clear to me. Yes, the internal investigation process for me is the investigation that was at the internal affairs. And that would have been no sense because from Henry Rasmus's position, that was finished already in March. So I don't understand what you would have been talking to.
But having seen this, do you now accept that this is what became of the charge sheet and that process?
But there was there any withdrawal, formal withdrawal of charges? I can't see that anyway, because it's Chief of Police writing to Brigadier Mkhwanazi. And in that he says, I'm withdrawing the internal investigation process. So if it's one layperson writing to another layperson, I do not know how that is to be understood, because it should have been explicit. If there was to withdraw the charges, which he says in his statement, then he should have said, yeah, withdraw the charges.
But he says so in his statement.
Yes, Chair, but I'm saying he says that in his statement, which is not in accordance to what you put to me on page 182, which says withdraw the internal investigation process.
I'm saying it's the same thing, Advocate Behari. I'm saying it's the same thing. So the withdrawal of the charges is the withdrawal of the investigation process. The chair put to Chief Mapiaya when he was here. In his evidence, the chair put to Chief Mapiaya that the effect of that second paragraph is that the charges were withdrawn. And he reluctantly accepted that.
Chair, as I said, from my side, it is about what is here contained in that letter. What Chief of Mapiaya says that he was instructed to withdraw. I did not give any such instruction to withdraw charges. So I'm not sure. And the meeting that I had with Chief of Police was between myself and him. And hence the letter, is it 180? The letter he writes to me speaks about, as discussed earlier today and agreed upon, I shall provide you with the comments. It was between myself and him. He copies HOD Gasheka. In the two, I can see there, but I was the one with him in the meeting.
You see, Advocate Behari, there's a reason why he copies all those people. There's a reason why he says it is addressed to, not just you. Look
Yes.
at it carefully. It's addressed to you and Linda Gasheka. She's not CC'd. It's actually addressed to her. It's not a CC. And the reason he's addressing it to the two of you is consistent with what he says in his statement that following discussions initiated by Gasheka and yourself.
Chair, yes, I was not part of the discussions with him. I'm saying I had a meeting with him separately on the issues related to Erasmus. So at this stage here, I don't, yes, he's writing to myself and so on. But again, and then he's asking them to be done before 22 June. So if he addresses it to Gasheka, actually Gasheka as well, then again, it's not clear who needs to be doing what, because I'm not involved in the withdrawal of charges.
I'm going to leave it there for now. I think we can safely say that the outcome of that meeting is that the charges were withdrawn.
As I said, it doesn't make, for me, it's not making, it's not coherent in the sense of he's talking about an investigation was withdrawn to Mkhwanazi. If you say it was included charges, Chair, I'll let that for you from in terms of what you think.
But Mr. Behari, you know that by the 22nd of June, the charge sheet hadn't gone out.
Yes.
Because you say that because it shows in the letter that he was seeking your guidance on that aspect, and he told you that it should have gone out on the 19th. So as the chair had discussed with Chief Mapiaya when he gave evidence, the effect of it, of withdrawing the investigation, is that those charges were not ever going to be filed. You knew that they hadn't been filed by the 22nd of June.
Chair, accepting that I'm one of the addressees in this matter. Now, I had a meeting with Chief and I discussed to say, let me look at how we can further it. But now in terms of this letter here, which he writes on the 21st, it includes now HOD Linda. So is it talking to me, because I wasn't aware that charges had to be on the 22nd. He said to me, it's supposed to be filed on the 19th, but can you assist in the way forward? The day when, taking into consideration the above, the charge must be served on the 22nd of June 20. He didn't discuss that with me, Chair. So if that were the case, I couldn't do anything practically on the 22nd of June to serve the charges. Nor am I involved in the serving of charges. I have no engagement in the serving of charges.
So you had no knowledge that the investigation had been withdrawn?
I had no knowledge of the investigation. Well, the investigation being withdrawn was now in terms of the letter to Mkhwanazi. But I had no issue of the charges to be withdrawn. I wasn't aware of that.
No, my question is very specific. You didn't know that the investigation had been withdrawn by Chief Mapiaya?
Chair, I've seen that. I can't tell you exactly when I saw it, whether it was in consideration of the bundle or not. Yes, so it spoke about an investigation being withdrawn, and that I would have drawn my attention to that document.
When did you know about that?
Chair, we've been in a consultation process in looking at all the documents from Erasmus, and that I've just got to see whether it was in the bundle as well in that Erasmus. I'm not sure at this stage.
Were you aware when you met with Mr. Kanye from IPID that the investigation, the internal investigation, had been withdrawn?
I wasn't, if it was withdrawn of the internal investigation, yes, but on the withdrawal of the charges itself and discontinuing of the investigation or of the disciplinary charges, no, I had no knowledge. It was apart from, because I didn't follow up with that. When we had Kanye come through with the disciplinary, I spoke only to the IPID report.
Okay, but so you knew that the investigation had been withdrawn by the time you met with Mr. Kanye?
Yes,
Okay, so by 9 November, you knew that it had been withdrawn?
yes.
Now, why are you making a distinction with the charges? Because as far as you knew, at the last you knew of it, 22nd June, the charges had not gone out. The charge sheet had not gone out. So how does the charges still stand when the investigation had been withdrawn and you knew about that?
Yeah, I knew the investigation was withdrawn or in terms of the content of the letter. I'm not sure who withdrew it and who did what. I didn't follow up on that process. So when I spoke to Kanye, of course, I know that the city's processes had not proceeded with the charges being served and so on. And to go back to what I spoke to Henry Erasmus about, to say, Lieutenant Colonel, if you have finalized your investigations, proceed immediately to serve the charges with the disciplinary. It wasn't about me getting involved in the process, because if they hadn't done that, that is what I spoke to Henry Erasmus, all of this matter would have been addressed.
Okay, so if I am to understand then, insofar as the IPID report or memorandum directed the city to institute disciplinary proceedings against Commissioner Mkhwanazi, you didn't have any involvement to that, you didn't follow up on that, you didn't have a discussion with the chief of police about that?
No, it was the process for disciplinary, for the directive you mentioned, was on that side. Mine was only on other processes when I engaged with my divisional head to look at fraud and corruption.
Okay. Now, were you aware of what the consequences for the institution, for the city would be if they don't comply with the directive from IPID?
Yes, in terms of the legislation, I didn't deal with it specifically here, but again, it was a directive from IPID which would have been followed up between IPID and the chief of police and HR. I wasn't involved in that process.
Okay. But are there consequences for the accounting officer who, as you said, is your accounting officer? You are the person that's seized with giving her legal advice. If she doesn't ensure that these charges that the disciplinary proceedings aren't instituted?
The accounting officer would have been, yes, accountable overall. She would have engaged with, or should have engaged with chief of police and HR to look at whether the charges, that process has taken place. Mine was on the issue of interest was on the DPP instructions, if there were criminal prosecutions, and then how we dealt with that in terms of going forward in other processes.
Okay, so now when there's a directive that there must be proceedings instituted, you withdraw yourself from that process. But when it was an internal investigation, you inserted yourself in the process.
When there's a regulatory body directive, that is a directive, unless we deciding to take that on a review process or something like that, then I would get involved in it. It's a directive to the EMP, to chief of police, served on the executive mayor and then to the city manager's office. The issue of the internal processes is a specific directive from the city manager to say that you will, to the extent that you need to bring the additional leg. It is not about any convenience or otherwise. It is about what I must do when it comes to the internal investigation and in terms of this. I also deal, I'll just deal with that issue there.
Okay, so why were you then involved in the response, the drafting of the response to the IPID memorandum?
The response on the drafting of the IPID, the draft of the IPID memorandum was to look at information specifically on the fraud and corruption and what are the definitions. Hence, I gave it to my divisional head to look at what are the definitions, where do we see in the IPID report, what can you ascertain to that? Because when we deal with that issue, then we could finalize in terms of DPP instructions, and then our legal processes could have carried on.
But the IPID report wasn't asking you for a response regarding the criminal process. It was asking for a report on the disciplinary process. If you look at page 103 of the report, it says, conclusion, IPID awaits a report relating to when the disciplinary actions were instituted and how the matter was finalized to enable the institution to comply with the provisions of Section 30C of the IPID Act. Had nothing to do with the criminal charges.
Chair, again, IPID was requesting a report from the Chief of Police, addressed a letter to him to say, give us a report on progress on that. Ours was only to look at the compliance in terms of the criminal charges. Hence, we started drafting our report to deal with the issue of the criminal charges. The issue of IPID's directive goes to the city manager, to MAPIA, and to HR. So the progress report would have been coming from that side.
But, Mr. Bahari, why are you responding on the criminal charges? It says to you that they want to report on the disciplinary actions, and then they say to you, the docket is referred to DPP for decision. It doesn't need anything from you. You are not even the accused. If there is an accused, insofar as the DPP process is concerned, that's going to be Commissioner Mkhwanazi, and he must get his own representation to deal with that. You looking out for the interest of the city is being asked to respond about a report on the disciplinary proceedings. You ignore that, but you want to address the criminal issues.
Chair, I did not, you say ignoring the report on the disciplinary charges. Again, that is streamlined through the Chief's office and the HR. I was not involved in that. In terms of the DPP instructions, it is important in terms of when it comes to us of only criminal charges that are being laid. That is, we would look at and then look at what other processes in the city would have to be invoked in terms of reports to the city. Hence, the engagement was after meeting with Kanye and the DPP instructions. We were waiting for that document to say what other processes that need to be invoked in terms of the process of finalizing on the IPID findings. That is where so I was not involved in the other process with the Chief of Police and with the HR.
Mr. Barry, this report contains only one instruction, and it is that you institute disciplinary proceedings. That's the only instruction there is.
Yes.
And then in page 103, it says a docket is referred to DPP for decision. That's it. The rest of it summarizes what their investigation has. It analyzes, that's what they use, the word they use, what the investigation has found. So you are not required by this report to do anything at all. No. In the line of what you've done, the municipality was called upon to conduct a disciplinary process against Mr. Mkhwanazi. You tell us in paragraph 181 of your statement what it is that the city manager instructed you to do. You don't claim that it came out of the report. You say the city manager said to you, you prepare a draft response acknowledging receipt of the report and addressing certain technical issues that IPID had not clarified, including the status of matters referred to the Director of Public Prosecution for decision. That's one that your city manager said you should look at. The scope and confidentiality of the report. And 3, the distinction between preliminary investigative observations and findings capable of immediate implementation. So you've told us what it is that the city manager wanted you to look at and prepare a response. That has nothing to do with what is contained in this document. And so the question is, what relating to the instruction from IPID were you dealing with? Did you want answers from IPID about?
Yeah, the clarity was sought. It's got nothing to do with the disciplinary directive. This was in terms of us checking on the issues of the corruption, the fraud, and the status of the report, which we would then get further information from IPID as regards the full DPP deciding to arrest or proceed with the case. I would have to give a report on that basis to the MPAC and to council. So that is the aspect where my part, which I spoke to city manager about.
Why did you care? Why does it matter to you what IPID is doing with the DPP? I mean, the report doesn't ask you to do anything at all. In fact, it's not even the municipality that is being referred to the DPP, it's an employee. Why does it matter to you what is happening at the DPP and between the DPP and IPID?
Chair, if it's an employee that's been involved but concerns the city.
And you're told to discipline that employee, and that's the one thing you don't do.
Chair, it's not about me not doing the discipline. I think I've addressed that issue. There was processes that I followed and what needed to be done between HR and all the other parties.
But you've also told us that you now have the power to review processes, and that was Mr. Ngiza's evidence as well, that things, you're restructuring the powers that you got now were such that things have to come through you. He could no longer prepare charge sheets and just discipline people. You had to do the approval. So we know as a date of this report, you now have that power.
Chair, the power was not for me to discipline. I think if you go back.
The power was to check for compliance, to review what they are doing.
Yes.
Yes.
And to recommend to the HR HOD who approves. So the internal process, this was already a finalized report by a regulatory body.
Sorry, by?
It's by a regulatory body.
Yes.
Now, that does not come into the scope of what Ngiza mentioned, that the powers were taken away, because if in this matter here, the HR has already had a directive from IPID, proceed with that disciplinary. Mine was looking into my other processes to impact to council to report on this employee that has been now charged or has been arrested because of the serious issues with regard to IPID. Chair, if I may, I think it was somewhere in Ngiza's document. IPID seemed to have been involved in this matter from about April 2023, which I only saw in the transcript. But here, dealing purely with what my obligations in terms of the criminal aspects, it is still an obligation from the compliance aspect.
What is your obligations in terms of the criminal aspects, as you put it?
Say, if there was an employee arrested for the serious corruption and fraud, the obligations would be for me to do a report to impact Municipal Public Accounts Committee to say that this is what we're finding, this is what arrested thing. We need to consider then to council, how do we, if it implicates aspects in the city, then do we need to do anything further in respect of a pension retention or whatever if there's loss?
Sorry, in terms of what?
A pension retention, if there's loss of the city, to calculate our losses, and then we will claim that from the pension and so on through the HR process. But mine was to report on the issues, to impact and to council, to say that these are the issues of compliance or non-compliance that we are finding in the city.
Okay.
Mr. Behari, you'll recall that earlier I reminded you what part of the context is, and that is what Chief Mapie, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Ngiza are complaining about concerning you is that you were protecting Brigadier Mkhwanazi. That's the context. Now, the issue Commissioner Baloyi is raising with you, which is IPID recommends that Ekurhuleni must institute disciplinary proceedings against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. What do? You do nothing about that. But what you do instead is to try to respond blow by blow to the criminal process that's been instituted and which has not been referred to Ekurhuleni, and indeed, it ought not to have been referred to Ekurhuleni. It has been referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions. That indeed is where a process of that nature resides. And you then try to respond to that process which is with the DPP, instead of responding to the recommendation to Ekurhuleni. That, I suggest to you, ties in with a complaint made against you by the Chief of Police, Chief Mapieye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Nkiza. It actually ties in with that. Because you say, this one is within what we as Ekurhuleni can do. They recommend to us to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi. We are just going to be silent about that. It's within our control. What's not within our control is the criminal process. Let's go for the criminal process. Let's try to stop that criminal process. Let's try to show why it is unfounded. It ties in with a complaint by these three employees of Ekurhuleni. What's your comment to that?
Chair, firstly, on the IPID report, the departments were addressed to deal with the disciplinary directive. My issue was not about challenging the DPP instructions or whatever against the employee. Ours was to look at, from Mr. Kanye, when you say DPP is dealing with them, why are you not arresting them? If I was going to be protecting Julius, as the environment created, why would I look at, why didn't you arrest him quickly? Why did you arrest him in terms of the process? Even up to now, Chair, I'm not aware of the DPP having finalized those instructions. So it wasn't about challenging and protecting anybody from being charged. It was purely to look at what are our obligations I've got to respond to, because the implications of an officer or official that's been charged in terms of fraud and corruption, there are other implications in terms of which I will have to do a report to impact and so on. It was never, and in no way did I speak to Kanye to say that we want to challenge the investigation or the part of the DPP. That's their stories. That's there for them to deal with. But what is concerned is then when are we expecting? Because we would proceed with that from the directive to Chief of Police and then to the HR. That's a disciplinary process. Mine was to see that bid in. How do we, for my purposes, in reporting to MPAC and Council, to give a full understanding of what is going on and what could be the other measures we implement to deal with it. So it's not about challenging. I agree. It's not about challenging any report.
Let's look at the heading of the letter written by Mr. Zulu and Mr. Mahwiting, which had your full support. You said so earlier. You said
yes.
You even took it to the municipal manager, but that you wanted to correct some little administrative thing, but not so much the content of what the letter raised. Look at the heading, Volkswagen CAS 262/03/2023, corruption, fraud, and corruption, and then in brackets, Julius Dr. Mkhwanazi. The reference to the CAS number, CAS number, that's clearly the criminal process, and it is only that criminal process that this letter addresses. And the two people who have signed this letter are your juniors. And in fact, in so many words, in your statement before us today, you say you appointed Mr. Zulu because of his experience in prosecuting. So you basically wanted to attack the criminal process. Even if you're doing it within the municipality, the idea was to say, there's nothing here. That's the point I'm making. And indeed, if you go through the entire letter, it deals with the charges and it will say, the elements of such and such a criminal offense are A, B, C, D. A, B, and C have not been satisfied because of A, B, C, D reasons. It's trying to puncture holes through the possibility of any criminal charges. So it's on that basis, and you identified with this. You identified with this letter. It is on that basis that I suggest to you that there may well be, and I think that's an understatement to say there may well be substance in the attack by Chief Mappiaye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Mkhize, which is to the effect that you were protecting Mr. Brigadier Mkhwanazi.
Chair, the issue of that letter was, yes, it refers to the criminal processes, because my interest would have been to report on that. I initiated that issue, I referred you in Jabulu to look at the elements. What do we need to look at in terms of my report to MPAC and to Council, where we cover this and we say to them, this evidence is linked to that. The DPP process can never be a challenge for us internally. The only issue we get involved in terms of the city is any of the city officials who are charged as a result of their holding an office representing the city. But not, if the cases were against Julius Mkhwanazi, it should have been then proceeded by the DPP. Mine and my interest in the team, and speaking to Jabulo specifically, was to say, let's look at the issue, because when we do our report, and that is why the document never went out. It was in preparation for engaging with that once we received the DPP, to look at our finalization in terms of what report do I have to do, from a compliance report to MPAC, and to that to say that this is what the engagements are, this is how the fraud is covered, this is how the corruption issues are covered. And that is the report we did. We have no power to engage.
And nothing at all about the recommendation which concerns something that was within the remit of the municipality, the recommendation to discipline. Completely silent on that.
Chair, because that was the process in terms of the directive by IPID to the Chief of Police for the disciplinary process. That would have been accepted, would have continued that way. My interest was then to look at then, what is our reports in terms of compliance? One of the delegated functions is for me to report on compliance of non-compliance issues to council and to the mayor and to the city manager. So those are the functions I was looking at from the criminal aspect.
I suggest again that you were not in the least bothered by that recommendation because you knew that, this doesn't bother us. It's within what we can do within the municipality that doesn't bother, and we know what we are going to do about it, which is nothing.
Chair, I was not aware, I don't know where that process has taken or what. I was not involved in that HR process or the issue of Mappiaye in terms of the IPID report. I did not accept there was going to be nothing because mine was focusing on the other aspect. That departments, they are responsible for that. They got the directive on the disciplinary process, and they ought to have done that. It's not about me knowing that there was going to be nothing. Mine was to say that this is what my purposes are. I was very clear to DH Zulu. Let's look at these charges because there'll have to be a report for me to counsel to deal with those issues.
I find it strange. This is one document from IPID. It deals with the criminal process which has been referred to the DPP, and then the recommendation to IPID. You have instructed Mr. Zulu to deal with this, and he's assisted by Mr. Mahweting on that document. I do not understand this thing about that document being completely silent on the issue about the recommendation to discipline. Because if in your mind that was an issue that had to be attended to by Chief Mappiaye I would have imagined that this document should have said so. We have dealt only with the criminal process because I, as the head of legal, Mr. Behari, believe that the recommendation to discipline falls within Chief Mapieye and that he is going to attend to that. So I'm going to be silent on that. This document does not say, it's just silent on that.
See, it is silent on the disciplinary process because the directive came there from IPID. The parties who it was addressed to Chief of Police to continue with that process. Mine was only focusing on the criminal aspect. Hence, it's silent in that document that we didn't want to cloud the issues about seen to be attacking the finding or the directive on the disciplinary process. Ours was purely to do the report on the fraud and corruption, to make the findings once the Mkhwanazi had confirmed, because he did give us undertaking, he'll confirm once the evidence is finalized. And then we could have included that in my report to MPAC and the council.
Thank you.
Mr. Behari, this letter or this report from IPID, what suggestion does it contain?
I've let us say the document was not finalized. It was not.
No. I'm not asking you about a finalized document. Your letter at paragraph 11 says, respectfully, the suggestions of IPID, given such material omissions and failure to thoroughly investigate, risks the city in any further processes herein. The question, which raises the question, what suggestions did you see contained in this IPID document?
We focused on that issue of the DPP part.
Is that a suggestion?
No.
Did you consider it a suggestion?
There's two aspects to it. If you're saying to us as a city, proceed to discipline. Proceed to discipline. When you say then, however, so those are when we looked at the documents and the word term suggestion, of course, it could have been another word used. Hence, the document was never finalized. It was never sent out. It was still in its draft form to deal with it.
Let me stop you. Where is the suggestion? Your letter says the suggestions of IPID cannot be given effect to. They risk the city, you say, in any further processes. My question is, in this IPID document, what did you consider to be a suggestion in this IPID document?
As I said, Chair, we haven't finalized the full report. The suggestion was used at that stage when they drafted the document. Now, when we had finalized, it was finalizing a proper document in terms of addressing after we received to Kanye, we would have dealt with it. For me, the issue was, you're saying in the recommendations, this is the process for...
Can we agree the IPID document contains no suggestion to you, to the city?
Chair, there's no suggestion. Hence, I'm saying this document was not finalized.
I think we'll go quicker, Mr. Behari. Can we agree this letter, this report or this communication from IPID does not contain a suggestion to the municipality?
Chair, okay. The first part of that read initially opening, it was a directive.
It's an instruction.
Right.
Yes.
If I look at the titling of the document.
What do you want me to look at?
The titling of the document was a clear directive. It says to proceed with disciplinary.
No, it's not the title. There's a summary of allegations, which is paragraph 1, which summarizes, and then paragraph 2, case docket contents, and then that reads, in terms of section 30 of the IPID Act, read with a SALGA disciplinary procedure, you are hereby directed, yes, is that what you're looking for? You're hereby directed to initiate. Yes, that's an instruction. It's a direction to the city. Yes, it's an instruction.
Yeah.
It's not a suggestion.
No.
Okay.
Then the second part, if you go to the, and I'm trying to find my document.
Yeah, you can find it. The second part in page 103, under the heading IPID recommendation, it says the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken. And then it then concludes, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision. And then the conclusion, IPID awaits your report relating to when the disciplinary actions were instituted and how the matter was finalized to enable the institution to comply with the provisions of Section 30C of the IPID Act. And my question is, where in these paragraphs do you read what you refer to as a suggestion in
Chair,
your letter?
We were still looking into the latter part on page 103.
Which latter part? Where it says the docket is referred to the DPP for
above
decision.
that,
Sorry?
okay, above that,
Above that, it says, based on the above information contained in the case docket, the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken.
yes. So, Chair, where it was clear at the outset the directive comes through, so that was clear, we accepted that. Now, when we came to the second part we were dealing with then, what is the implication? Why would you have it necessary? If you're saying to us as a city, we recommend that you proceed with the disciplinary, and say that. Why was it then to come and say that, however, the document has been referred to? So we were still looking at that, Chair. That is why we did not finalize that document, to get the additional information. So that is what I'm saying. If
So
there's
you
something-
you wanted IPID to give you what they gave to the DPP so that you do what with it?
No, Chair. The issue was, if you're recommending disciplinary,
Yes,
recommend it.
they've done so.
Right.
It's
So-
very clear.
Yeah.
They've directed and they've recommended
And
in
they
the
recommend it.
concluding
Then
paragraphs.
the aspect of then, however, what must I, so you're saying to me, I'm recommending, I don't want to go into definitions of how we understood it, but it just means it gives a different, for me, it meant that the word however actually contradicts what was being said above.
No, it doesn't. You see, you can't read this document selectively. The concluding paragraph says you must submit a report. So clearly in this paragraph and consistent with the recommendations, the direction and the recommendation, the concluding paragraph says you must submit a report about that disciplinary process. Now, your letter doesn't say anything about that. It doesn't say we cannot submit a report to you because we are not running a disciplinary hearing. So your concluding paragraph, we are not going to be able to meet it. In fact, your letter says the suggestion you make, after all these material omissions, your suggestion, right, will create problems for the city. I'm still to hear from an answer from you. What in this 3-page document did you consider to be a suggestion from IPID?
Chair, in looking at for our purposes,
Yes.
the report for IPID on the disciplinary process will come from a different entity. It will come from
Yeah,
chief
no,
of
no.
police.
I've heard
right.
that. There's no value
So
in
when we're dealing-
Mr. Behari, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to you. You've said that repeatedly. I'm asking you a simple question because on my reading of these 3 pages, I don't see a suggestion. I don't understand it to contain any suggestion. So that's where my question comes from. Help me see, like you, what did you consider to be a suggestion from IPID in this letter?
Chair, on the issue of the criminal aspects and the last page 103 of that document, I'm saying that on the one hand, you're saying we recommend disciplinary processes. However, now what does mean is, should we now hold off on the disciplinary?
No,
What-
no, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry.
Chair-
No, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry. We have only so much time. You repeat the same thing over and over. You haven't, it's simple. You can point me to a line which you considered to be a suggestion. I'm not asking you for an explanation. I've read the letter. I do not see any line in there that amounts to a suggestion. And I'm simply asking you, please point me to where you say it's a suggestion from IPID. It doesn't require explanation. If you want to say to me, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision, you considered it a suggestion, it is what it is. But I'm asking you, point to this letter, point a paragraph, a line, and say that's where the suggestion is.
Chair, in page 103.
Yes, 103,
document.
okay?
So mine is to say that when we read the document, but if you're saying we recommend disciplinary, say it and stop. And then you want a report on disciplinary, that is it. But when you're saying to me, however, it is sent to the DPP, it may just be an interpretation at the end of the day, but it was come to us. That is why we never finalized that letter. It was never sent out because we were still dealing with it.
One last try from me. Did you, where they say we recommend, the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken, is that what you considered a suggestion?
The recommendation part, read together with,
No. I remember it's me who's trying to understand your evidence. So my question is formulated so that I can understand what it is you are saying. It doesn't help to say more if that's not what I'm trying to get clarity on. Am I to understand you to be saying in that paragraph where it says IPID recommendation, that paragraph is what you understood to be a suggestion, or it's a suggestion you are referring to in your letter?
Chair, as I said, we had not finalized that letter. So we're talking to a letter that we still had to look at the full content of it. At that stage, when they use the word suggestion, it looked at as if they were not certain in terms of, by the use of the word however.
Okay.
So the directive on that is important. It goes through that HR process and so on. The report asks for the HR to say whatever you want with that. But from a criminal aspect, dealing with purely with the DPP, that is where our interest was. And dealing with that issue, and Mr. Kanye, tell us what
So what did you understand to be the suggestion in that paragraph?
I understood to be, say proceed with the recommendation is to do this, and dealing with the Kanye and the criminal process. However, it is the DPP's instructions.
No,
So-
sorry. IPID recommendation is the heading. It says we recommend disciplinary action, and then it concludes, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision. What do you consider to be the suggestion in this paragraph?
Chair, on the first part of the letter, it is a directive issued by IPID.
To institute disciplinary
Institute
proceedings.
disciplinary action.
Yes, in that paragraph.
In that paragraph.
Yes,
You're now coming to the latter part of that in the same report.
yes.
And you say now we recommend. We're recommending disciplinary action, which is the difference, as I read it, from directive.
And you've said that has nothing to do with you. It's an HR thing.
It's an HR process.
Okay, so we are clear. We are sorted with the first part. You're not concerned with HR, and so not concerned with the disciplinary action. That leaves us now with however docket is referred to DPP for decision. Is that the part that you say is a suggestion? And it has to be, because it's the only part that is remaining under IPID recommendation, which has nothing to do with disciplinary action.
Say, the disciplinary action part is a directive. The document must be read holistically. So the first part is you're directing to say, we're directing the disciplinary process be taken. So that will be covered between Chief Mapuyeye and HR. But then you go back in the same document and you now come and say the recommendation. So it's a softer approach to a directive.
Yeah.
And then you have to come on the issue and say that, furthermore, however, and that is why it could have been interpreted to be a suggestion. Hence, we did not finalize the document, Chair. We did not finalize it because there were other information before we gave a proper document out.
Okay, all right. I guess I can't take it further, at least not this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Ms.
Thank you, Chair.
Sigazulube?
Yes, Chair. We'll resume tomorrow at 9:30.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Behari,
9:30. Thank you, Chair.
we adjourn and please be here before 9:30, so we may start at 9:30 tomorrow morning.
That's fine, Chair.
Let us adjourn.